Hey, what's up? It's me, Onion Man. I'm here, I desperately need a haircut, and I'm going to talk about Kirby. So this is something I've mentioned in a lot of my videos, and it's the fact that the 30th anniversary of the Kirby video game franchise is fast approaching. It's happening in less than 6 months. Pretty crazy to think about. And as such, I'd like to speculate on what Nintendo and HAL Laboratory might do to commemorate the occasion, which they certainly will in some form, but the specifics of it, as of yet, are still unknown. And that's what I want to talk about. The first thing, the most obvious thing, I think, for most people, is we are due for a new Kirby game. And as we've seen, HAL Laboratory has really been talking up their next Kirby project, saying it's going to be some sort of evolution of the series in some way. And that's very exciting, obviously. And I think the natural direction that us fans have come up with is that it's going to be a 3D project. A game which takes place in a 3D environment. The 2D games are great, obviously, but I think with Star Allies we started to see the cracks show in the formula. Now, of course, the next 2D game might bring something really new and exciting to the table, but as of right now, the 2D games are becoming a bit overdone. And that's not to say I don't love them. It would truly be most exciting to see HAL Laboratory try something new with the series. Now, I could see this being announced sometime this year, perhaps in a September Nintendo Direct, or conversely it could be revealed and released sometime in the year of 2022, which is the anniversary year. My next item on the Kirby 30th anniversary wish list is a port of Kirby and the Rainbow Curse. This is a very underappreciated Kirby game, I'd say in large part because of the platform it was released on, Wii U, obviously undersold by quite a lot, and this game never really reached the audience that I think it deserves. This has one of the best Kirby soundtracks ever made. It's astounding. The remixes are phenomenal. The original tracks are insanely catchy and memorable. The visual style is frankly unmatched in the series. This is the best looking Kirby game in my opinion. The stop motion visual style is stunning. Obviously, the main issue with a port of this game is that it relied heavily on the gamepad functionality, specifically being able to draw lines for Kirby to roll across. And this is definitely a big issue because the developers mentioned that they tried to make Rainbow Curse work with a pointer, but it just wasn't really working out and it wasn't very feasible in that form. And so that does put a damper on this idea, but I think it could still be possible. I think they could include pointer functionality, but make it clear that the game is more designed to be played in handheld mode with the touchscreen. I don't know if that would work out, but I think giving this game some form of a re-release would be really great since it deserves to be played by more people. Another game-related item is a sequel to Kirby's Dream Collection. This is kind of a weird idea, but what I'm thinking is they take the Dream Collection name and branding and include some new games that were not in the first game. The NES and SNES main series Kirby titles are on Nintendo Switch Online already, so we do have a good amount of those games already available on the platform. So it would be a shame not to have those older titles like Kirby's Dream Land and Dream Land 2, as well as Kirby 64, but I think it would be a bit cooler if we got a collection of games released after the year 2000. So what I'm thinking is something like Kirby and the Amazing Mirror, Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland, Kirby Squeak Squad, Kirby Superstar Ultra, and then finish it off with Kirby's Return to Dreamland. This doesn't include the 3DS games or any of the spin-offs really, but I think that would be a solid collection, and I think that would fit within the confines of what I imagine a Dream Collection sequel to be. They could also do some new challenge stages using the Star Allies engine. That would be a fun bonus, and I'd love to see an updated version of the Kirby Museum since a lot has happened in the series, obviously, since 2012. This is another fairly unlikely one, but I think it's an interesting idea, and I like the concept of continuing the idea of a Dream Collection series. It would also be good to just have the first Dream Collection just ported over to Switch. That would be good too, but a sequel I think would be more interesting and could include a few games which are somewhat overlooked. The next item that I'd really love to see on the 30th anniversary is the return of a Kirby Orchestra. There was one for the 25th anniversary, which is available on iTunes and Spotify. I highly, highly, highly recommend checking it out. It's astounding. I'd say my only issue with the Kirby Orchestra was that it was only available in Japan on one night. A vast majority of fans were unable to see it live, which is really unfortunate. Obviously, listening to the recordings of it that they released is amazing, but it's definitely not even close to the same experience as listening to orchestrated music live, especially music which a lot of us have such an emotional connection to. Kirby music is something that is incredibly special to me. It's one of my favorite elements of this series, and hearing it orchestrated was a dream come true, and I would just love to see that return for the 30th anniversary. I know we still have Corona about, and that's a real shame, but hopefully by 2022 there is an opportunity to have this concert available more widely. I'd love to see it in the US, even if they just did another one in Japan and released it on music streaming platforms. Again, that would be okay. It would still be somewhat disappointing, but I'd still love to see more Kirby orchestrated music. Now we're looping back around to the video game side of things, and I'd say we are definitely due for a Kirby remake. It's been a really long time since the last one, unless you count Kirby's Extra Epic Yarn, which is kind of like just a enhanced port. It's not, I don't know if I'd consider that a remake per se. But if you don't count that, the last one would be Kirby Superstar Ultra on the Nintendo DS in 2008. And I think the reason we haven't gotten one is because there's no candidate that really stands out from the rest as really needing a remake. All the older Kirby titles essentially still hold up today and are perfectly playable and enjoyable by modern standards. I think there are a few titles which would really benefit from a remake, and the one I'm going to focus on today is Kirby and the Amazing Mirror. Released on the Game Boy Advance, this is one of the most unique Kirby titles ever made. It's essentially a Metroidvania-esque game, which is pretty bizarre, and the game does have actually a fair amount of issues. The way it's paced is kind of strange, and the multiplayer is not very accessible. By modern standards, this game could use a few tweaks to make it the best it could be. The ability selection is pretty good, but it's back when the Kirby abilities were basically just one-button things. Not like how in modern Kirby each ability has multiple moves. In that game, it's basically you get just one move, except for Smash Bros. Kirby, which was pretty amazing. I think of all the older Kirby games that I think of in the realm of a remake, I'd say Amazing Mirror just stands out the most, because I think there's the most they could do to update it. I think they can make it a lot easier to do multiplayer, either on the same Switch or with multiple Switches via local multiplayer, or perhaps even online multiplayer, because that's an element that's very heavily featured in the marketing and theming of the game, but actually achieving multiplayer on that game is not very feasible, especially today. So if they could just take the level designs, tweak some of the mechanics, maybe update a few of the abilities, I think that would be a really, really interesting entry. Alright, our next one, another video game related thing. It's a big one. I would love to see the return of Kirby Air Ride in some form. I'll take a port, like just a straight port, 480p. That would be fine. That would be amazing. But obviously more would be even better. A sequel, for instance, that would be pretty tremendous. I don't know how likely that is. Probably not very, but it's not impossible. Kirby Air Ride City Trial is definitely the definitive Kirby multiplayer experience, so having some way to play that on a modern system would commemorate the 30th anniversary of the series really, really well. Our next item is Kirby Superstar Stacker, or Kirby no Kirakira Kizzu as it is known in Japan. I did a review of this game last year. It's essentially an updated version of the Game Boy game Kirby Star Stacker, which was only ever released in Japan on the Super Nintendo, which is a really shame because it's a very solid puzzle game. I mentioned in the review last year that Nintendo could release the game in its untranslated form on the Super Nintendo online service, because they've done that with a few other games, specifically Puyo Puyo 2 and Paneled Pawn. Both those games are in Japanese, but they're also falling block puzzle games, so full translations aren't really needed to get a majority of the enjoyment out of the games. Honestly, it would be fine if they just released it on the Super Famicom service in Japan, because Switches from any region can actually access the Super Famicom service as long as you make a Japanese account. It's pretty easy to do. So even if they just released it on the Super Famicom service, that would be a way for international players to actually play it, which would be amazing. Our next one is a little bit of an obscure one. I think this is a long shot. I don't even really need this to happen. It would just be cool. I think there are a small handful of games that were released on the Satellaview system. It was sort of like an early internet phone thing. I really don't know how it works. It's pretty archaic and strange. The gist of it is there were some exclusive games made for this service that were never made available elsewhere, and a few of them were Kirby games. And I don't think they're ever going to get re-released, but I would love to be wrong, and the 30th anniversary is as good a time as any. So go for it. Why not? This year saw the release of the Kirby manga in English for the first time, releasing in 3 volumes throughout the year. I reviewed volume 1 recently. Check that out if you'd like to hear me talk about it for a bit. It's kind of weird. But I would love to see even more, and, 30th anniversary, that's a good excuse to release even more volumes. Just release a lot of it. I'd love to read more. It's fun. Our next thing is in a similar realm of Kirby adaptations outside of video games, that being the Kirby anime, Kirby Right Back At Ya. It's really difficult to find currently. You can find most of it on YouTube, but it's chopped up into different chunks. Some of the episodes are titled incorrectly. It's kind of a pain to go about watching all 100 episodes. I've attempted it a couple times and I just lost steam because it's a kind of frustrating experience. And it would be a lot better if the anime was made more widely and easily available, specifically on a streaming service like Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, HBO Max, Paramount Plus, Peacock, Disney Plus, Quibi. Having it on a streaming service would be great. I'd also take like a Blu-ray release or something. I don't know. That's probably not very likely, but I would buy it if they did that, so maybe do it. Either way, I want to be able to watch the full anime, and right now, it's not very easy to do that. I'd just like it to be a little easier. Here we have another long shot. This one's probably one of the least likely to happen. I'd love to see the Kirby Café available internationally. That would be great. I've always wanted to go to the Kirby Café. It looks like a lot of fun. They play Kirby music. You eat Kirby food. There's like plush Waddle Dees that show up. I want to go. But it's in Japan, and that's a bit of a tall order for a lot of people. Traveling is not easy. Now, this is not at all likely. As far as I'm aware, Kirby seems to be far more popular as a brand in Japan, so it just is a lot more feasible to have a cafe over there. I do have like sort of an avenue where I can see it sort of fitting in, which is the Universal Parks. Super Nintendo World opened briefly in Japan this year and then closed again because of Corona yet again, but it'll eventually be open again, and there are more locations which are currently under construction. Namely, the one in Universal Hollywood is scheduled to open next year. I really hope that happens, but I think it would be really great if somehow they found a spot in Universal to just stick a Kirby Cafe. That way they could sort of have more Nintendo franchises represented in a Super Nintendo World area. It doesn't have to be in the Mario area, it could be just sort of like adjacent or somewhere far off. Maybe it's just a temporary thing, I don't care. If it was there, I would go. Fortunately, the Kirby Cafe is permanently open in Japan, so if I ever am able to get over there, I'll definitely check it out. But until then, it's not really easy for me to get over there, so having a location closer to me would be amazing. Not at all likely. I wouldn't expect this in the slightest. If it happens, I will be incredibly pleased. This is my last video game request of HAL Laboratory and Nintendo for the 30th anniversary, and it's a re-release of some form for Kirby Tilt and Tumble. This is one of the only games in the Kirby series that is essentially only playable on the original hardware, that being a Game Boy Color with a cartridge. There's no real other feasible way of playing it. I did buy this game at some point, and I tried to play it on a GBA SP, which was kind of impossible. I've lost the cartridge since then. That's awesome. It's not an easy game to get your hands on and play, and I would love to have a modern way of doing it. I can't imagine it would be that difficult to map the gyro of the Switch to the gyro of the cartridge. I mean, I say not that difficult as in it's technically possible. Obviously, it's more complicated than that. Again, this stuff is not likely, but it would be really awesome as a fan of the series, and would love to see it. All right, last item. I would just like more Kirby music to be available on music streaming platforms such as iTunes and Spotify. It's just something that's nice to have. It doesn't have to have any new inclusions in it. It can just be a straight upload of it, like how Planet Robobot was. But they've only released Robobot, the 25th anniversary concert, and a 25th anniversary collection of songs, which is also really great. Recommend checking that out as well. But that's it, and Kirby games have phenomenal soundtracks. It would be great to see the Kirby Star Allies soundtrack released. I know they did a physical release with discs of that, I think last year. They could do that. Pretty much the entire series is deserving of being added to these services, because it's just a more convenient and easy way to access this music other than searching YouTube, which is fine. It works, but it's not like ideal. And so that's my Kirby wish list. Most of these are moonshots. They're not going to happen. If even one or two of these do, I'll be pretty happy, because there's some exciting stuff that could definitely go down. I think we're definitely getting a new game, as I've mentioned time and time again. It's coming, I swear. Just a few other bonuses would also be amazing. That's the end of the video. I don't have anything else to say. I'm going to leave.